72 years old. The gas tank gets smaller, it seems like the older they get.
I don't know if I'm gonna make it though, we'll see.
Well, you'll make it there, don't worry. I can remember, how old are you now?
28.
Listen, when I was 48, I couldn't even envision what I would be like when I was 72. I just assumed that would probably never happen. But it does. It does. Hi, Declan. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
You have a good Christmas?
Had an excellent Christmas. We were even more quiet for
You know what? We were in Chicago,
barely made 72.
Knoxville,
December 72.
and we couldn't have anybody here.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And then Christmas, we're all gonna have to
Yeah, it'll go back.
So,
go back to where we
you
are.
at 87, right?
Scott, how you doing?
Is that?
86. I actually left in May, but I was pregnant, so I actually finished school. Had one in March, I could go in and have them defended. So I had to actually go to more school.
Not bad.
I have no idea.
She graduated the same year my sister did.
I read for free. It's like looking at this, it could. Yeah, I know. I do my
He didn't have it, like,
Where did you go to high school?
which is why I had plans to go. I was going to graduate from I didn't go to the hetero zoo.
Other plans?
And they literally started learning that last year, Canada, and they just learned at such a high level. I guess I've heard that here. Hey, buddy. You staying on top of all this stuff? It is more so. Especially with the mask. Oh, wait, I gotta get some binder.
How's it going? Thank you. They're starting to get a little heavy. Like they're not heavy, but after you wear them all day, and these masks, like every time I pull it off, I pull on them, my ears are gonna be this long. For goodness sake.
So how's the family doing?
Everybody's good. Plugging along. Chugging along.
My belief is this time next year. Okay, my apologies for starting a little bit late.
I hope you're right.
Call the meeting to order. Oh. We start out, sorry, I was on the closed session, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. Thanks for coming out. I don't have to say it's cold, and I really do appreciate. I also want to have a note of appreciation to the board members and administration, because I had a schedule conflict. I had the date wrong in my head, and so I appreciate everybody reworking their schedules so we could have the meeting today. Thank you very much. So. Again, I want to thank you for being here, and we will start with introductions.
Randy Gilman, Assistant Superintendent, Elementary.
Tammy Cardona, Assistant Superintendent, Secondary.
Jim Shalhoub, Director.
Crystal Hargis, Director.
Bob Grunwald, Director.
Judy Turney, Board Secretary.
John Stewart, Chief Financial Officer.
Declan Fitzpatrick, Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Kelly Brock, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources.
Carol Yount, Director.
Michelle Chamberlain, Director.
Judy Smith, Board Vice President.
Nisha Patel, Superintendent.
And I'm Vicki Hansen, Board President. And I'm going to make this reminder for the board, just because sometimes it's hard to hear with the mask. Make sure you speak into the microphone. And also, if there's a motion, say your name after you make the motion or second it. And to help with the vote process, if you're voting yes, raise your hand so that Judy can clearly see, and raise your hand if you say no. It's just as we move along, sometimes we talk a little bit fast and it's hard to keep up. So, and I do that a lot myself, so try to slow down. First item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes from December 15th.
Motion to approve, Smith.
Second, Jim Shalhoub.
All in favor? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Next item is the approval of the agenda for tonight.
Motion, Yount.
Second.
The second was Bob. And the next item is patron comments. Mr. Gilman?
No comments this evening.
Oh, did we not? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll step back. I messed that up completely. Okay, we didn't vote on the agenda. All in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Next item, patron comments. Dr. Gilman? No patron comments. All right. 3.2, superintendent comments. Dr. Patel?
Yes, thank you. I just want to wish everybody officially a Happy New Year, because I can't believe we are now in 2021. We are closing in on the end of first semester, so we're finally here. And so this Friday, just a quick reminder that it will be half day. And then Monday, obviously, Martin Luther King Day, we're off. And then we will be beginning second semester next week, and we will be bringing our kids back 4 days a week. As far as I talked to Jefferson County Health Department today. There was a slight increase in the number of cases per 100,000. The positivity rate is actually stable. I believe it went up just a tad, but not drastically, which is something we did expect after the holidays. And so our plan, though, however, is still the same. We've been working really hard. I want to thank publicly Dr. Gilman and Dr. Cardona for working with all the building principals and Mr. Barbara Gallo to making sure that all of our mitigating factors are in place. We will be, I want to make sure I also thank our nurses, because I know they have been working really, really hard with our contact tracing. And we know that when we come back next week with more students in the buildings, contact tracing there will be an uptake. And so I want to in advance thank all of our nurses, because it is going to be a team effort, even with our administrators working together to make sure that we are contact tracing and quarantining as needed and as appropriate. As far as, you know, we allowed parents to make a choice in terms of whether they want to go in person or virtual. We do have some more data in regards to that. What was interesting to note that at the secondary level, the number of students that remained virtual first semester was about 26%, and the second semester, it's exactly the same, 26%. At the elementary, we had roughly 19% of our students virtual first semester, and now we have 12%. So we had a lot more at the elementary level coming in for in-person for second semester, knowing that we're going to be coming in 4 days. So I wanted to make sure I shared that with you. And then I truly, at the end, I just want to thank everybody, because I know this is hard. I know this is going to be a challenge, but I know that we will also get through this as well, especially the teachers that have been working really hard. And I realize and I recognize this is another change that we're going to have, but I truly believe this will be good for kids and we will get through this. So I want to thank everybody for their work on this.
Can I ask a question relative to that?
Yes.
What is the number now?
Positivity rate?
Yeah, right.
JP, can you put that slide up for me? I think I shared it with you. Had it.
Dr. Patel, if you don't mind, I think you might have some questions from board members, if that's okay.
Yeah. So this is our current district data right now. We have 32 positive students, 225 in quarantine, 8 staff members that are positive and 25 in quarantine. And then the district data, or the community data, is right there. So if you notice, you can see the trend from December 13th through the 20th, through the 27th, and then the most updated one, January 3rd. And then you can see the positivity rate. And then you can see the 7-day average as well, that has gone up.
So is that 6?
22, yeah.
Just in the district, not the whole county?
No, that's the county data.
Okay,
That's
'cause
Jefferson County.
I saw that positivity at 31.63, and the rolling was the same, the 68, but, okay.
That was, this data I got just today from Jefferson County Health Department. So this is not our own internal data.
So what do the cases look like in our district? You have where we are right now. How does that look compared to, over the last 4 or 5 weeks?
In terms of quarantines?
The number of kids that are quarantined and the number of kids that have active cases and staff that has active cases.
JP, if you look at that data dashboard that we have on the website, Mr. Shalou, we haven't kept trend line data in terms of positives and quarantines over the weeks for our own internal district data.
Okay.
We can give you a snapshot, but we don't have trend line for that. So if
It's just
you,
I think they
interesting to
just
see if we're-
updated all the
if we're
time,
sliding
Jim.
down the hill or we're going back up the hill relative to problems.
I think it just depends on the weeks. It truly does. Some weeks we'll have a lot of quarantines and a lot of positive cases popping up. Some weeks, there are not that many. So it's been fluctuating a lot.
I spent some time during the weekend listening to Dr. Fauci, a lot of information about putting kids back in school. And he says that, we should do everything we can to get our kids back in school, whatever we can do. The key has been the same the whole time, and they say the things that you got to do is, number one, everybody has to wear a mask. That's absolutely essential. And the only area of caution needs to be in cafeterias because, people aren't wearing masks there. And so I hope that we're going to implement our protocols with fidelity. And that means everybody wears a mask unless they're in a room by themselves. And we do everything we can to provide as much social distancing in the cafeterias that we can, because that is the one place that is a problem.
Yes.
I think, Jim, with the information that Dr. Patel shared with us from Crystal's request, the cafeterias, especially at secondary, are probably going to be the most problematic because, most of the buildings are going to have 200 or so kids in the cafeteria at one time without mask, and they're going to put things in place to kind of, that kids are with cohort groups and they have to sit in the same place, but they're not going to have masks on when they eat, and there's going to be a lot of kids in there, so they're going to spread them out as much as they can, but we need to be aware that, and that's going to be,
Well, in the
it's going to
literature,
be an
that's
issue.
the piece that we really need to try to work on to make sure we get right.
Yes.
And I, Nisha, I was going to make the offer to you. I know when Tony interviewed me about the reopening, one of the questions that he asked me that wasn't in the paper, he said, are you comfortable with Dr. Patel's decision? And I told him that I was, because I knew that you're a visible and hands-on superintendent. If you had concerns about the classroom, the lunchrooms, you'd go see for yourself and help problem solve what those issues are. And I'm just gonna volunteer. If you wanna go to the lunchroom sometime, I'll go with you. So, anytime, I'll wear my mask and not touch anything. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Since you brought up the information that I requested, Nisha, did you share that with all the boards?
Yes.
You did, okay.
Yes.
All right.
And I thought it was a very good document. What it did was showed the enrollment, the total enrollment, the percent in person and virtual, the numbers, and then how the classrooms broke down with the average class size, and then the information about the lunchrooms by each level. And that, I imagine that was really good. That was something that you guys needed anyway. It's a good document for decision-making, to help with decision-making.
I want to
Mrs.
thank Dr.
Hanson.
Gilman and Dr. Cardona for putting all that data together, very quick, short notice, so thank you.
Anybody else have any comments?
I just wanted to check on our custodian area, because I know that we're short custodians. Are we able to keep things at a good pace for our kids as far as cleaning is concerned?
Yes.
Do we have subs now that are able to come in, or?
We don't have, actually, that is an agenda item for the situation that occurred at Seckman High School, where we're going to be getting additional help with that. As far as the rest of the staffing, we are fully staffed, correct, Mr. Barbagallo? Yes.
Thank you.
One of my questions would be, if I'm remembering correctly, I know at the start of the school year, Scott, you reported that we were going to need like maybe 20 or 22 additional custodians. So are you saying we just have the regular level, or do we have those additional as well?
We don't have the additional yet. We've started hiring those.
Okay. And Nisha, there was one thing that I thought might be helpful, if you could keep the board informed through a weekend update or something, if you could give us regular reports on throughout the week, if there were how many teaching positions we weren't able to fill with sub. If people were out, how many teaching positions were vacant that we couldn't get subs for, so we have some kind of read on that.
Mm-hmm.
Vicki, add to that, could we also have like an update on how the expense of subs to cover, like you provided us?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Dr. Patel, did you have some more information to
no.
share?
No, that is it.
Okay, well, the next item is board member and cabinet reports. Dr. Gilman.
Yes, just briefly, I want to kind of echo what Dr. Patel said and thank our staff for all the hard work in making this transition from hybrid to 4 days. There's been a whole lot of planning and effort that has gone into that. And I want to thank our parents for being patient and flexible, because this is quite a bit of change on their part. So thank you to our parents out there. That's all I have.
So I kind of want to reiterate what Randy just said. Preparing for second semester has been a lot of work, and I know the teachers have put a lot of work into that, the counselors, the nurses, and I just want the parents and the students to know that we appreciate their patience as we worked through this. Our goal has always been that second semester is better than first semester. We learned some things first semester, and I think we have some things in place now at the secondary level to help with some of the problems we had first semester. So, as we go through things, we get better at them. So I just appreciate their patience, and look forward to having kids back next week. Thank you.
First of all, I want to congratulate Dr. Patel. She received quite an honor over the holidays, I guess it was it not?
Yes.
She was selected in the St. Louis region as new superintendent, or emerging superintendent, I think they call it now, of the year. And that's quite an accomplishment and something to be very proud of. You need to understand, though, that comes with a little baggage because you got a reputation to live up to now, so good luck with that. One other thing I'd like to mention. You mentioned something last week relative to how the students are doing. And that really resonated with me for a couple of reasons. When I was at Fox Elementary School in 5th grade, one of the requirements that the teacher had was for us to memorize the preamble to the Constitution. Now, I remember when they first said you got to remember the preamble to the Constitution, I thought he said remember the Constitution, and I really freaked out. But the truth is, that was probably one of the most important things that I think I did, and I still remember it. I've never forgotten that. And it's become, in all my public service, it's kind of become a guiding principle for me. And last week, we had a number of people last year commenting on the COVID and going back to school and all that business. And we had all kinds of different positions. And I remember saying, after listening to the letter that came from our teachers and then the other parents and teachers that were out here, I remember thinking, you know what? There's not one person that didn't say something that wasn't absolutely legitimate. I think it's important for our community to understand that it's not our place to either look upon what you say as being favorable or unfavorable. Our job is to just do one thing and listen and be grateful that you're willing to come and share that information with us. And you should never feel that you should be in any way, we should look upon any of those comments as unfavorably or negatively toward you, because you deserve a lot better than that. And the truth is, the preamble of the Constitution, there's something that says, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity is our kids, and that's where that connection came in. But we had a good meeting. We had a lot of good ideas come, and as a board, we need to hear from you. We need to hear from you, and that First Amendment's pretty important for us because we don't get much information from you unless you come and tell us, and so we appreciate that. And I thought it was a pretty good meeting, and I appreciate all the input we got from all the groups, and so I think that was a winner for us.
Okay, Crystal.
I just want to again thank all of our teachers and support staff for all their hard work, and we truly appreciate it. And otherwise, I have no other comment.
And just again to reiterate the thanks to our entire staff, certified staff and non-certified staff. I know it's been tough. There's been a number of illnesses amongst staff of all type, bus drivers, custodians, maintenance, teachers. So it's been a very difficult time. I think the administrators have done a great job holding it all together, and hopefully we'll get through this COVID thing sooner than later.
We have two pieces of information I'd like to share. The first being, last fall the board approved the purchase of a new salt truck for the district because one was completely falling apart. And just to let you know, that vehicle was delivered yesterday. And I know Mr. Barbagallo and his staff are very happy that the weather is held off until the truck got here. So that's here, and thank you for that. The second, and I know the board's aware of this, but I want to speak to it publicly, is that I know at the December meeting we were trying to figure out if we were going to end up having to borrow against the TAN, and I was hoping we weren't, pending a large tax disbursement coming in. We received on the 17th of December, so a couple days after our last meeting, $22.3 million in a tax disbursement, so that definitely helped us, and we did not have to borrow against the TAN. am glad that we had that in our back pocket should we have needed to borrow against that. But the good news is we did not have to, so just wanted to share that. Thank you.
That deserves a round of applause too, folks.
Yeah, that is good.
I just wanted to mention that I get to do some very optimistic things in my job, and the middle school and high school counselors and principals, in the midst of doing all of this other rescheduling and getting ready for second semester and doing all the work they had to do to get second semester schedules ready, they also now have the course description guides and course selection books for next year ready to publish. So we get to, we've gotten to plan for next year and make sure that we have course offerings and elective choices and a full schedule for everybody to go through the process of selecting their courses for next year. And the counselors will be able to publish those on schedule, and kids will do Connect nights even if they're virtual, and curriculum fairs even if they're virtual, and they'll get to pick their courses for next year, and we can all look forward to an exciting school year. Thank you.
I just want to echo what's been said by so many already and extend my thanks and my appreciation to all of our staff, certified and classified, for everything that they have done throughout this difficult time and everything that they're doing to prepare for second semester and that they'll continue to do throughout the rest of the year. It has not gone unnoticed and is deeply appreciated.
I'd like to say to our staff and students that don't put too much pressure and stress on yourselves, thinking that you haven't accomplished what you should accomplish at this time of the year for our students. It's impossible to do under these conditions what we've done in the past. So just be thankful that we've been made through this semester without any catastrophes other than the pandemic, and look forward to the semester coming up. And we've kind of gotten, or you guys have gotten, an idea of how things are going to have to be done now with this pandemic. And I think our next semester is going to be much easier for everyone. And we will see some accomplishments from our students. And I'm hoping that our teachers will feel more comfortable with what they've been teaching and realize that the stress and pressure they put on themselves is not going to make it any better for them. They are doing a great job, but I know that being a teacher is very important to these people, and they feel responsible for everything that child learns or doesn't learn. So I just want to say I'm really proud of how they're handling this situation. Thank you.
I echo what everyone else has been saying about just thank you to all the teachers and the counselors who, especially in the secondary, who have just been busy with creating new schedules and rearranging. I know that I personally had to contact them twice, and I feel bad because I know how busy they are, but they were very nice about it. I also want to Declan was talking about the counseling department, and that just reminded me of what Sackman Middle School did with creating an online virtual way to get a hold of a counselor if a child is experiencing like difficulties with if they're just having issues. So I appreciate that. Social emotional health is so important to me. And I appreciate the staff that have made it their priority to make sure that our kids are well. And I'm looking forward to second semester. This week is finals week. So I know a lot of people are stressed out. I know a lot of parents are yelling at their kids, telling them to study. And boys and girls, just study. And thank you, teachers, for allowing maybe a use of a study guide or other things that can help the children. Thank you.
Just to reiterate a little bit about what Carol said, We've got to remember that everybody's in the same boat, not only our school district, but our county, our state, our country, and even the world. Everybody's in the same boat, and we've all got to start from the same place. We've got the same disadvantages. And so after reading some of our emails, I just wanted to say that I'd like to thank the teachers and parents who are preparing to enter into a new semester with new students, new teachers, and new schedules for their patience and their positive attitudes. First semester was a work in progress. Teachers, students, and parents had to learn new ways of doing things. As teachers and parents communicated, most settled into a regular routine. As second semester gets ready to begin, I'd like to remind everyone that all students, teachers, and parents, in-person and virtual, will start with that adjustment process again. Will it be different? Yes. Will adjustments need to be made? Yes. But as second semester begins, all students should begin to gain more and more independence. Students are no longer just first graders, but they're becoming second graders. Sixth graders are no longer sixth graders, but they're becoming seventh graders. Learning to be more independent is the goal of each student as the year moves on. We have such a great school district, teachers and their support staff, administrators, cooks, nurses, bus drivers, custodians, and secretaries, all working together to make your children independent learners and thinkers. As we move into second semester, let's keep our mind open and our attitudes positive. Let's positively communicate with each other, giving the home side and the school side each a chance to try something a little new and different. It takes everyone working together to create and nurture all the students, no matter what grade they're in. Every day is new and every day is different. I just know that everyone learning at home or at school will be positive, kind, and open-minded as we move into second semester. Change is always difficult, but together we can do it, and I know we're going to have a lot of learning this next semester. Thank you.
I only have one comment, and that is I sort of wish that we could just give an all appreciation award to all the staff. And, you know, I know we have our masterpiece and our teacher of the year, but really everybody has stepped up. And so if that was possible, I was, maybe because of the holidays, I was thinking about the movie The Grinch Stole Christmas. And, you know, at the end where the Grinch is, the tree's all messed up and everybody in Whoville still comes out and they join hands and they sing, and I think we're all going to be okay. We just need, of course, we can't join hands and sing, so, but we're all going to be okay. So we can do it like this, I guess. The next item on the agenda is 3.4, middle school ACT Aspire data. Dr. Cardona.
So you can pretty much figure if I'm coming to the mic, it's probably to talk about data. And I actually am here to talk to you, as per the request from the board, a little bit about the ACT Aspire. So many of you know, as juniors and as high school students, our students take the ACT. So one of the things that we do as a district is we do the ACT Aspire. Last year, we take the test in October. So because of the shutdown, that didn't impact us taking the ACT Aspire last year. And I have some data that we've collected over the last 5 years. So, JP. So the ACT Aspire does directly align with the ACT that the students take in the high school. It gives us some good data points to see where are our students at and what do we need to be working on prior to them taking that at the high school level. In the past, some of you may have heard the students were taking the Plan or the Explore. We've kind of gone back and forth with some different things. And we actually have done that with 6th, 8th, and 10th graders until we moved to the ACT Aspire, which we did in 2015. And then in 2015, we were not testing the 7th graders yet, but starting in 2016, and you'll see that in the data, we added 7th grade in there. I already mentioned we take the ACT Aspire in October, so it is early in the year. And that way it also does not coincide with us also giving the map, right? That'd be a lot to be doing the ACT Aspire and the map at the same time. One of the good things about ACT Aspire is that we can, teachers have the option to give interim testing. So interim testing is a short one-day test they can give that directly aligns to the ACT Aspire that the students take. And it gives them some data points and it scores them for them and gives them some good
Tammy,
feedback.
could you repeat what you just said? The teachers have the option to do what now?
To do interim testing. So each, let's say math, when we bought the program to be able to have the teachers give it, it's a one class period test, and they select the objectives they want to test, and then it gives them the feedback. It scores it and gives them the feedback. I think it's like a 24-hour turnaround. And there's 3 different ones they can give throughout the year, if they choose. That's part of it. So let's look at a little bit of data. On the screen, and I kind of want to point some things out. So you'll notice in 2015, there's a break in between the blue and the gray because we did not give 7th grade tests that year. So you'll also notice that we also don't have 7th grade data for the national because we didn't give it. They didn't give us that benchmark. Now you'll notice that the colors are the same. The solid colors are our district, and then the broke up colors are the ones with the pattern is what the national tests were. So one of the things I want to point out with this is you'll see 6th, 7th, and 8th grade data. So the 6th grade, you'll notice, is in the blue. 7th grade is in the orange, and 8th grade is in the gray. And then the national is the same way. The blue broken up is the 6th grade, orange is the 7th, and then the gray is the 8th. One thing that I noticed when putting this all together, and I kind of laid it out this way because I noticed a really quick pattern, and that is you'll see 6th grade is at one level, they drop for 7th grade, and then they come back up for 8th grade. And I noticed that not only as a district, but you can see that exact same pattern happening nationally as well. So to me, what that showed was, and I think we kind of all know this, the longer a student is in a building, the better they are. And I think the more comfortable they are, and I think that shows just in this as well. So this is the reading data. One other thing that I wanted to look at when looking at reading, because that is a focus in a lot of our buildings, a lot of them have built that into their building improvement plan, is trying to get all of our students to read on grade level, was I wanted to look at the cohort. So when we look at students, we want to be able to see what does student A look like at this grade, and then what do they look like at the next grade, and so on and so forth. So you'll see in the 2015 through the 2017, that darker purple color, that's when they were 6th graders. Then what did it look like when they were 7th graders? And then in 2017, that light blue, that is how they performed as 8th graders. Same group of students, it's just their 3-year, it shows you what they've done. And then you'll see the cohort that started in 2016 as 6th graders. Then the cohort that started in 2017. So again, you see that same pattern, right? You see where the 6th grade's at, they kind of dip a little bit for 7th grade, and then they come back up at 8th grade. And a lot of that, when you look at the 8th grade versus the 6th grade, most of that is above where they started in 6th grade, or even equal to where they were in 6th grade. And then 2018-19, of course, we didn't have the data for them as 8th graders, and then, of course, you'll see the 2019 for those 6th graders. Then English, I broke it down the same way in English. Again, you will see a pattern, so same colors, run in the same way, so the solid blue, you'll see 7th grade, or 6th grade, orange is 7th, and then gray. Again, notice the exact same pattern that we have. Matches the national with that English as well. So that's something good for us to look at because we know things can vary with tests from year to year, and I think that shows that the impact that has is kind of impacting everybody that's taking that test and what that looks like. Math. So here again, same thing, math. One thing I do want to point out is you will see math, the pattern is a little bit different. So you'll see the 6th grade again in the blue, 7th grade is in orange, and then your 8th grade is in gray. Again, we're seeing a little dip in that 8th grade. So where the other ones, we were seeing a 6th grade come in a little dip at 7th and then going back up at 8th. This is a little different, which I think is important to look at patterns. Now, one thing to note is that when you're in 6th grade and 7th grade, you're taking grade level math, right? You're taking a 6th grade math class or 7th grade math class. You may be taking a pre-algebra or a algebra 1. So there is a little bit more variance in the math and what kids are taking with math versus what happens in reading and English. And then I looked also at the math cohort, because when I saw the different pattern with math, I wanted to say, okay, so what is that student doing as they move through the cohort? And this is what I found. So in 2015, as 6th graders, you'll see that dark color there. That was 6th grade. This is what they did in 7th grade. Then that's what they did in 8th grade. Then again, the next cohort when they started. So you'll see that the pattern is a little bit different than what we saw with our English and our language arts. We're going, honestly, in the opposite direction than where we want to go with that. And then, of course, I couldn't finish the cohort data because we haven't gotten the cohort on those students haven't gotten to that point yet. And then science. So we also do ACT Aspire in science, broke it down the same way. And as I figured as I was going through this data, I'm kind of seeing a little bit of the same thing with science as I saw with math, which we would kind of think would correlate with each other. So again, the solid blue is the 6th, orange is 7th, and then the gray is the 8th. And then you'll see over the 5 years what has happened with that and where we're at. You know, if you look at the 2019 data, you can see we're pretty steady across. 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, they all pretty much scored where they're at, which was a little different than what we saw with the national. And I wanted to go through that very quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, anything specific about ACT or any of the data that I shared.
Okay, this test is a good predictor. I know from my own experience with my grandson, it's a very good predictor of how they're going to probably do when they get up to high school in the ACT, correct?
Correct.
They even give a predicted score, I think, do they not?
They do.
Yeah.
And they show a progression and, you know, where, so if a student scores at this level at 6th grade, this is where we would expect them to be at 7th grade, at 8th grade, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Now, I guess what I noticed, Tammy, is I always compare how we're doing against the national average, because tests change and, you know, and all that. And I see the exact same pattern here that we have on the map, where we were doing, like in 15 and 6th grade, we were +7 above the state average. And by the time we got to 19, we were -7 against
Correct.
the national average, I should say. And it almost lines up perfectly with how the map was looking, which means the map is a pretty good predictor. When we went from 16, we were 1 above, 15 we were +7 above the national average, 16 +1 above the national average, and then in 17 we dropped down to -2, 18 -3, and 19 -7. That's a 14-point drop from 15.
Correct.
And it follows that same exact pattern that we have on the map, and that worries me a little bit because something has changed in some of the key areas, and we all know this. The condition that our kids are in when they leave their first 9 years of school and go into high school, those are the skills and the tools that they take with them to have success with the more sophisticated courses that they're going to take in high school. And I really think this deserves a very careful analysis. Now we got 2 data points that are very, at least in reading and mathematics, that are very consistent. And I think we need to really examine what we're doing, how we're formatted, what our configuration is, to see why that's happening, because I think most people would agree we want to make sure they're doing well with reading and English and mathematics before they get to high school, because if they're not, they're going to be in trouble. And the other thing is, it's a predictor that by the time they take that ACT, they're not going to be doing nearly as well as they've been doing in the past years.
Right, and you know, to kind of piggyback off of what you said, you know, the ACT Aspire is given in October. The map is usually given end of April, beginning of May. If we were, now, you know, if we give the ACT Aspire in October, and we get those test scores back, and usually they're pretty good at getting those back to us. We usually get those December, January, and if we could use those to say, okay, this is where Johnny is as a 6th grader, and then use those interim tests that we have, so a teacher can say, okay, I'm going to give Johnny this in reading, this is where they were, and what I'm doing as a teacher from that January till that May, is that having an impact? So we do have those tools that we can use. It is something that teachers have at their hands to use if they so choose to do that. And I think we need to get better at using the tools that we have, and teachers understanding, it's the same thing with anything that we present, is that teachers have to be comfortable with it, and we have to be able to give them the training to understand, what does this data mean, right? Because you can look at data and it can mean one thing to you and mean one thing to me. And I think when we see patterns that we're seeing, we absolutely need to have a plan to make that better, and we absolutely need to use the things that we have in our hands and the tools that we already been given to try to increase in that.
I tell you, with this particular year with COVID, I'm incredibly worried that our kids are going to be impacted very negatively in their GPAs and everything else, especially our high school kids. Our K through 8 kids, we can remediate and try to get them back up to speed. Unfortunately, the freshmen through the seniors this year, in talking to a number of the parents last week, one of their biggest concerns was that their kids are not doing very, very well, and they're getting some pretty bad grades. The sad part about it is that grade is going to impact their GPA forever. And it would be nice to look for a way to maybe keep that from happening, because this is something that happens once in 100 years. For kids to have to be impacted by it for all the way through the rest of their schooling just doesn't seem fair to me. And so it seems like we could come up with some kind of a system to keep that from happening. And whether it be a pass-fail option that the kids could take. Let's say they're taking, for example, I can tell you this, a kid is taking calculus. If he's doing it virtually, he's in trouble. That's a tough chemistry, tough thing to take. And many of those kids are pretty good students, but it almost makes it impossible for them to do well. For those lower grades to impact their GPA at the end because of what happened now, I think is just really unfair, and I think we need to make a strong effort to try it. I know Michelle was talking about her kids being under a lot of stress right now. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, this has been tough on those high school kids. I've got one in college, finished up last year, one in college. This has been a terrible thing for them. And so our job, in my mind, is to try to figure out ways to make this less of an impact on them any way that we possibly can. So it's something to think about.
And you know what, I agree, and I think that we all agree with that. And we actually have been talking about what do some things look like, how does this look in Tyler, and what can we do to help support those kids so that the impact from what has happened that's totally out of their control, that they had nothing to do with, how can we make that a little less of an impact for them as they move forward, and what can we do from our end to help with that? So we are having serious discussions about that, and what does that look like?
Tammy, I'd like to say I really appreciate the information, especially the way you've presented it with the cohort groups. That helps a lot. One thing that I'm a little bit easily discombobulated, I guess I would say. So besides where you have each subject area with all the years, the grade levels by year, to me it'd be nice to have 6th grade this year and that year all in a row compared to national, so you don't have all the other stuff at the same time. And that would be another way to, not you can't do it this way, but I can't find the points as quickly as Jim has and calculate it. And I'm like, okay, which way's the trend going?
And I'm happy to add slides to this so that you can see it that way. I just was trying to keep it short, but I can absolutely do that.
No need to do anything right away, but it really is good information, so appreciate the effort.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. We're talking about children and their success, and I was wondering, have you guys started talking about summer school and what that would look like, and For the kids that are, making the D's and even a C to a kid that makes all A's, can they redo that class during summer school and get that grade point back up?
We've actually talked about a lot of options. We've talked about looking at NCs. We've talked about looking at pass fails. We've talked about what about a student auditing a class. So we've had multiple conversations and talking with Luke, because one of the hurdles that we have is, what does that look like in Tyler? What does it look like with DESE when we report things at the end of the year? Like, when can we close this out? So let's say we give a student an NC, right? When does that have to be closed out and a grade be put in there before we can upload things for DESE? So there's a lot of things that we have to work through, and different ways to look at it and see what's actually going to be the best and actually give our students the best bang for the buck.
Are you saying NP?
NC.
NT, what does that mean?
No, NC, as in no credit.
Oh,
So-
no, NC, no credit. Okay. And that would be, now, if they get no credit, they have to take the class over again, correct?
Correct.
Okay, if they get a pass, it wouldn't calculate into their GPA, but they wouldn't have to take that class over again,
Right,
correct?
well, and that's what we're looking at to see, can we separate a pass-fail from GPA? Like some classes, you can say this impacts the GPA and we can click a button. I don't know, as far as Tyler goes, with the system, what does that look like? Can we say a pass-fail doesn't go into the GPA? Those are things that we're looking at and trying to figure out, how does that, on the bookkeeping end, what does that look like?
I know kids that have gone through school and they've worked hard to make really good grades all the way through. And then they get to this situation, and no fault of their own, and they become victims of a situation that they had no control over. And it's not that they've not done what they can do. It just seems to have something factor into their GPA that is going to really have an impact on them. And frankly, it may be something that'll cause them to lose motivation to try to keep doing well with
Right.
their studies. And that scares me more than anything else.
Well, and hopefully districts across the state and across the country are looking at that too.
What's
For
that?
Hopefully the districts in the state and across the country are doing the same thing, right? What can we do to help this not be such a huge impact on these students as they move forward?
I know the universities have done some things to help with that, for sure.
Anybody else have any other questions for Tammy? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next item is CKC Building Blocks and Community Outreach Update. Randy?
So the board has asked for some documentation, which provides a 3-year history of revenues and expenditures, and those are attached there for your review. The deficits are directly related to COVID. We do expect and we anticipate a turn on this, especially in programs like CKC, if we can get into 4 days and stay there. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
I guess one of the things that I am trying to kind of understand is CKC and community outreach. I know they're separate programs, so CKC has more staff, but the secretary and the director of that program, of the community outreach, is that all their salaries listed in CKC rather than any of it being included in community outreach?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the way I think about that is CKC is kind of a full-time job for Sue, and she does a fantastic job, and you can see from past years actually produces a lot of revenue for the district. And then we kind of tacked on community outreach as like, here's another job, Sue. And so, like, to me, that's almost like what Sue and her crew does on the side. So I mean, that's just kind of the way we've looked at it, is community outreach is kind of an extra that Sue has taken on, does a great job with it. It's a lot of organization and stuff that she does on the side. If we don't run community outreach, it really doesn't, cost us anything, because it's just, they set up things. If there's enough interest, then, the program happens, like a Mad Science, and then, we just split the revenue with Mad Science at that point.
So the enrollment in all the CKC class, programs has declined. Do we still have the same number of staff employed in CKC? If the
No, we
numbers-
don't.
And those are all part-time positions, correct?
Sue, the directors are, but they would be considered, I don't know if they're,
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Do we have a, is it like half of the students are in the program, so we have to, like, socially distance? Is that why the number's low, or is it just because?
So the numbers are much lower right now because we are also mimicking what the school day looks like.
Yeah.
So students can only attend school on Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. Obviously, in our program, only students enrolled on Monday, Tuesday can come to CKC and vice versa. So that has been a big impact for us because at a minimum, it's cut us 50% of our overall total enrollment.
Yeah.
Next week, starting back 4 days, those students will be back in CKC, those that are attending, 4 days a week. And our rates for CKC, the way they've been set up for the last 5 years, is there's a 4 to 5 day rate, which will cover, which will, even at 4 days, they'll be coming back at a 5 day, 4 to 5 day rate. So the kids coming back, as well as the tuition going back to its normal range.
Okay.
I anticipate that we will continue to kind of climb more normal versus what we've had to endure as a result of the pandemic.
So what you're saying is that probably by the end of the school year, assuming that things go according to plan, that deficit probably will decrease significantly. Would you?
If I had to speculate, I would say it will decrease because our revenue, you can see the revenue obviously.
Right.
Way down, but the revenue is obviously going to increase. Now, we'll probably have some expenses that will pick up a little bit just to run the program properly, but overall, I anticipate that that deficit is going to continue to chop away. And you can see from the, obviously, the last 2 years, overall, and even last year, we were closed down the entire fourth quarter, and we did not service any students in June like we typically do, and we still had that surplus going.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And
So there looks to be, so that's a COVID impact, totally.
totally.
Looking at.
Kudos to you, Sue.
And Randy, on the Building Blocks preschool program, you just have a decrease, but they normally have 20 kids in each section, right? A morning and afternoon?
Yeah, we usually run about 18 kiddos. There would probably be about the average, and now we're running 12, and then even some are running a little below that, which is
So now you don't have a teacher and an aide, you just have the teacher, right?
teacher and aide, and a lot of the classes are still staffed similarly. One of the problems that we're having in Building Blocks is similar to what we're having in school. Is like if a aide goes out or a teacher goes out, we're having trouble staffing it with a sub occasionally, and then of course with preschool there's certain requirements for staff to student ratio for preschool.
Okay. Well, thanks for the information. We need to kind of stay on top of it. It's a pretty big deficit, but hopefully it'll be made up quickly. Next item on the agenda is financial report. John.
So the board has before them the financial statements through the 6 months ending December 31st. And you have the familiar chart. You will notice, as it's been all year, this current year is that the gray line all the way to the right in each of those months. And for the month of December, it is the third highest of all those 8 years. So that's good news. I want to caution you, though, before you celebrate, because those revenues, well, the reason for that is basically the $22.3 million we got, as I mentioned, December 17th. The majority of our tax revenues come in December and January, but they're split, and each year it's just a little bit different. So if you will notice, if you look at the three top ones, it would be 13, 14, and then that green line representing 17, 18, and then 2021 is the third. If you look to the month of January, of course we don't have the current year yet, but if you look to the month of January, the green is still in the top three, but the orange is way down. And so all I'm saying is there's timing of collections that can affect this. So do not expect the gray line to be the third highest whenever I report next month on the financial statements, okay? So we will be getting some substantial revenue during this month in January, but overall it's going to even out, and I would expect that we will, the gray line will be back towards the lower end of the years as we look at that. So, so timing of tax receipts affects that, but also, being halfway through, and we can look at, I'll speak a little bit to the financial statement itself, but we have experienced lower expenditures for the year. As you know, we did some budget reductions and some budget withholdings, and so our spending levels are down. As I look at the revenues through the month of December, they're trending pretty normal. All funds, our revenues are at about 47% of budget, and in looking at just the operating funds, 1 and 2, we're at 46.5%. And both of those numbers happen to be up over the prior year by $2 million and $1.7 million, respectively. Looking at the expenditure side, for all funds, our expenditures are at 39% of budget, and our funds 1 and 2 expenditures are at about 49%. Now, each of those are down from last year by $3.5 million and $2 million, respectively. So our revenues are doing better at this point in time than they were last year, as are our expenditures. So that also kind of helps that graphic display of what our balances were as of the end of December. So, we're going to continue being very cautious as we move forward through the year. I got a little bit excited towards the end of December when I saw a news release that the governor had released $100 and some odd million of funding that had been withheld at the beginning of the year. And I'm thinking, great, how much is K-12 getting? I think it was $1.5 million. So that's across the state. So no big change at that point. And I think my own thoughts, the reasoning behind that, K-12 being, one of the, either the largest or the second largest piece of the budget pie for the state, and we always absorb a big portion of budget cuts because, it's one of the big pieces of the pie. But whenever revenues at the state level are trending better than they had been, and they're able to start restoring some of those budget reductions or withholdings that they had, you don't start with the biggest bucket because that could be a big mistake. You start restoring at smaller levels, or at least I'm assuming that's what the State Department or the state is doing. And then as those numbers hopefully continue to come in good on the revenue side for the state, then any further releases at the state level hopefully would impact K-12 better or more and improve our revenue. And again, just to remind the board, so the $3 million that we've been withheld for state funding this year, that was all done in 1 month, and that month was July. So we've already absorbed that. So any release of those funds from the state through DESE will only improve our financial situation. Any questions from the board?
Do you have any questions for John? Well, that's a first. Should celebrate that, I guess. Next item is, it's you again, John, summer 2021 projects.
So, in our discussion from the December 15th meeting, looking at coming back to discuss summer projects for the summer of '21, this upcoming summer, and knowing confusion between calendar years and fiscal years and the like. And the board also mentioned of ranking projects because we had a list of projects that the board had been looking at over the last year. I updated this afternoon that document that is the $25 million basic 5-year capital improvement budget. And if you look at the updated one, and that is not the latest and greatest of that. That document is not. I'm not sure that it got attached, but regardless, for the 21-22 budget, which would be work that would occur in the summer of '21, so this coming summer, it would be in the following year budget though, because the work starts, none of the payments will be made until after July 1, so that's the following year budget. On this new document, the updated document I have, and I'm sorry that's not attached there, there are 3 items. I'm only going to talk about 2. The 3 items are Seckman High School and the HVAC and roofing work that's up to a 6-phase project, and then Fox Elementary School, which is roofing and HVAC, which is a 2-phase project, and this for this summer would complete the work at Fox Elementary. The third piece is buses, but we're not going to talk about that tonight. The 2 most important items that I would rank, and Scott's in agreement, is Seckman High School, HVAC and roofing replacements. Whenever that work planning started a couple years ago, it started because there were failures regularly occurring in the HVAC system there at that high school. And so we need to do roof work and we need to do HVAC replacement. That building is so large, in order to take care of all that work, the actual HVAC part was phased out into 6 different phases. After 2020, so this last summer, we had completed 3 of those phases. So there's 3 more, and in this document, and I'll make sure you all get a copy of this tomorrow, I apologize. It's planned out over the next 3. I mean, it's budgeted in this document over the next 3. 1.65 million roughly would be the amount for this coming summer at Seckman High School. The other portion, Fox Elementary, is about $2.48 million, and that would be pod 5?
It would be pod 3 and 4, the library pod, and some upgrades to pod 5, which was the pod that burned back about.
Okay. So did everybody hear that? So pods 3 and 4, the library pod, and a little bit for pod 5, which is the one that burnt a number of years ago, but it doesn't need as much improvement. So that's $2.48 million. So between those 2 projects, just talking about Seckman High School and Fox Elementary, it's a little bit over $4.1 million. And so that would be the work that I would suggest needs to be not delayed and advanced.
How many of those projects can you push off then? So you're only saying you're going to be able to push out about 800,000?
I'm sorry?
I think what he's saying.
Out of the $5 million?
Out of the 5 million, you're only going to be able to push 8 million back?
800,000 roughly. I mean, so 4.1 million, a little north
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that for those two projects.
Well, it sure be nice to be able to get that closer to 2 million bucks. Is there anything that we can do to change the scope of those projects so that we don't have to spend that, almost 5 million?
Well, it'd be about 4.1.
Well, on the Fox Elementary, it only says replacing roofing and HVAC. It doesn't say anything about the pod work.
Right, and it's roofing and HVAC on those pods.
Okay, so where does all the redoing of those pods come in?
Well, those end up being alternates in the construction documents.
To do the HVAC projects, the current HVAC systems in the buildings will have to be torn out, which are built into the shelving, it's built into a cabinet with a removable doors on it. That would all be removed as part of that project and has to be replaced. As part of that, we would upgrade the ceilings and the lighting as well in those pods.
Okay,
So
but-
how
but
many
first-
pods are you looking at?
What's that?
How many pods are you looking at? I'm trying to figure out a way how to push about $2 million of our capital project work that you're looking at for next year into the next year.
It would be pods 3 and 4, would have the total renovation with the cabinets coming out, new cabinets going in, and new HVAC, new lighting, new drop ceiling. The library area would be new HVAC, new drop ceiling, and new lighting. The 5th grade area, or the 5th pod, that burnt 15 years ago, I think, or so, would be just lighting and ceiling tiles.
Okay, so my question is, of the Fox Elementary project, how much of that could you break up into pieces to where you could push some of those projects back to the next summer, or the beginning of the next summer at least? Because you're talking about doing those this summer, right?
Yes.
The way we had structured that is, that would, pods 3 and 4 were the base projects. The library pod was an alternate, and so was the 5th grade pod an alternate.
Okay.
We can add to it to come to that total number. We could also reduce it if need be.
So let's just say that, as it turns out, instead of having nearly $5 million to spend this year, we only have $3 million to spend. That's all we have to spend. How would you structure that?
I'd have to go back and look and see what the estimates were for those alternates. I don't believe,
None of this has been bid or anything, correct?
No.
No, okay, yeah. So we still have the ability to kind of structure how we're going to do this. I just worry about this year's budget.
Right.
And if we can push $2 million back to do next year, I think that would be a pretty wise thing to do.
Well, and a couple things too. So we have a little bit of time, but I mean, we're getting to the point, if the work's gonna occur this summer, it needs to get bid out to get favorable bids and get on somebody's schedule. So, I mean, there's not much more of a delay that could occur. The second item that I would say, and I fully appreciate, we gotta mind the budget. But we also have, I mean, through the projections that I've shared with the board in the past, includes all this already, includes these, about $5 million in a year for the next 5 years in there. And keep in mind that that is the capital projects fund.
None of this is Prop P that we're talking
None of
about.
this is
capital
Prop P.
improvements,
This is
Jim.
all funded from the budget. And keep in mind that this is the capital projects budget, so it's Fund 4, which is not the operating fund. Now, those tax dollars, those parts of the levy that go to that are part of the operating levy. But this is capital projects, completely separate from Funds 1 and 2 operations.
Okay, I have a question. Why, like, for example, I know you don't have the sheet, the revised sheet, but could you explain why the amounts went up on both projects? For the previous sheet you had was $1,750,000 for Fox Elementary, and now it's $2,400,000, and the Seckman Senior High was $900,000, and now it's $1,650,000. So
It's a year later and better estimates
Oh,
as time goes on. And, I mean, cost of construction generally goes up. I mean, the pandemic may have caused some of that
okay. And then to make sure everybody understands, we're not paying for this year. It's coming out of
Correct.
next year's budget?
This
And
would
we're
be paid
approving it
out
now.
of the 2021-22 budget, which we haven't even talked about yet. That the board would be discussing through the spring and ultimately approving in the month of June.
And we don't even know what the budget's gonna be, so.
Right.
Scott, I believe, Scott, you wanted to say something?
The additional cost at Fox Elementary was the addition of the alternate bid. Originally, we went into, we were only gonna do pods 3 and 4, but as we started investigating into the work and what could we accomplish in the summer, seeing what we finished this past summer in the first part of the building, we felt comfortable adding those 2 other as alternates, based on the fact that if the bids were too high, we wouldn't include them, but we knew we could get the work done, or presumed we could, in the time frame.
So it's possible if they come in too high, then you wouldn't do the whole project?
Well, we wouldn't do the alternates. Our base would have been pod 3 and 4. Alternate 1 would have been the library pod, and alternate 2 would have been the 5th grade pod, or 5th pod.
So we're planning on paying for this out of a budget we don't really know about yet?
That's correct,
That-
yes.
That's correct. Based on projections that I have to this point, we will be able to fund that through the capital projects.
So John, you're the finance guy, so you're pretty confident that all of this is gonna be okay and we're gonna be able to afford it. Our school needs it, our kids need to be in classrooms where they have heating and air conditioning and proper lighting. And I remember sitting in a workshop with the principal at Seckman Elementary, and she was saying something about the electricity, like they didn't have enough outlets. Did they ever get more outlets up there? No? No. But I think that we should do this because I trust John, and I know our superintendent wants this, and that school deserves it, and so does Seckman High School. So I would like to make a motion that we award this, the bid to BRS for the completion of roofing and HVAC replacement at Seckman High School and replacement of roofing and HVAC at Fox Elementary School. Do I have to put a number in there? No.
I don't quite understand. A bid for what?
Oh, not a bid, you said right here we have to make a motion to approve it. Yeah, I want to make a motion to approve it.
Making a motion to approve the 2 projects for the 21-22 capital improvement projects for Fox Elementary and Seckman Senior High and award that to BRS. That's her motion.
So what we're talking about doing is encumbering about $4 million of our budget
For
before
next
we
year.
really looked at the rest of the budget.
That's her motion.
I just think this is a dangerous time to do that, folks.
There's a motion on the floor, and then we can vote. Anybody have a second? Well, she made the motion before people had more, so we can ask more questions after the motion's made, but she's got a motion on the floor, so I don't know.
I may be missing something here, but it seems to me it's going to be a little difficult to approve expenses that far in advance when we don't know what our budget is. Am I missing out on something here? We don't know what our budget is for that time frame, so then how are we going to know if we can really afford to do all of this at that time if we don't have it built into the budget?
Right. And I appreciate that, and I understand that. So capital projects are a little bit of a different animal in that you have to plan further ahead. And you got to look on down the road, and if you're going to accomplish larger projects, sometimes that means you got to start planning a project 18 months beforehand.
Planning, right.
Right.
I understand
And some
that.
of that planning, and just to, some of that planning, if you've got, I mean, you need to have professional consultants, whether they be engineer, mechanical, electrical, civil engineers to plan projects, or whether it be an architect. And so you got to start looking at things, maybe 18 months ahead, so that their background analysis and research can occur, and they can come up with some designs, and those conversations can be had. And then come to 6 months ahead is when you really need to be, which is about now, is really when you need to be putting that work out to bid. Now, that's still 6 months. You're absolutely right. It's 6 months ahead of the end of the current fiscal year and before the next year's budget occurs. However, we are now doing long-range financial projections, and I've been sharing those with you. And based on the current budget, this will work. And if you'll remember, based on, and the trajectories that I had built in there showed over the next 10 years, included our current salary schedules, and increasing insurance at, I think 5% a year, and some small increases in supply costs and the like, as well as very modest increases in our assessed valuation, because that, that's what generates our local revenue. But those were very modest. But it does include dollars that match these, as far as $5 million a year across those capital projects budget. The capital projects budget works. Now, as you'll recall, that sheet that we looked at last time showed that if we don't change that trajectory, then in 4 years, we're negative balance, and that's not possible. So will something have to change by that point? Absolutely. Can some of that be these items? You bet. And some of that could potentially occur in, a year down the road or 2 years down the road. But some of the things that we're looking at in these two, and the reason these two buildings are being, ranked so high is that, we're talking about the potential for catastrophic failures in HVAC systems in these two buildings. And if that happens, we got to fix it, and we got to fix it now, and it's going to cost more than what we currently have. So if we take a proactive step to look at going ahead and doing that this summer, then that helps reduce the probability that one of those failures will occur and gets us a step closer.
Okay,
What
Judy, I
concerns me,
think,
if
I'm
this
sorry.
state- I'm sorry.
Judy had a question. This is just kind of unusual because we have a motion on the floor. We usually discuss first and then have the motion, but it's there. So Carol's talked and Judy had a question, then we'll come to you, Jim. I'm sorry. It's just kind of unusual.
I forgot what that question was, but in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so over the past few years, capital improvements have been funded, and am I to understand that that causes your fund balance to go down, or the percentage?
Of the operating fund balance? No, well, no, not directly.
Because it seemed like over the past few years, the district's expenditures on capital improvements kept our fund balance at a percentage rate as low as it could be. It was always an issue that we kept it at a certain percentage, which left us no money for raises, things like that.
Memory is, from what Judy was saying, it was always right about, the fund balance was right about 15 million.
$15.6 million is where it's
Yep,
been for the
and it
last,
stayed just,
until this last year, and then we hit 15.3. I can't speak to before I got here. I do know our capital project needs are, as you all are aware, we passed a $40 million bond issue. We've got at least $150 million worth of needs. So there's a portion that at least needs to be funded by the budget, because we can't do $150 million in one bond issue at this point. So capital projects is, in some sense, a subset of operations. They are linked. However, they are separate in ways too. As I said, the levy, the tax levy that funds a portion of the capital projects fund is part of the operations levy. Okay, and so it's been 62 cents for a couple of years, and before that I think it was 50 cents or a little bit north of that. And obviously it's the board's decision to make. However, if we continue, I mean, there's a reason that we have $150 million worth of needs in this district for capital projects. And that's because we deferred maintenance over the years for whatever reasons. And I understand, I mean, we've got real financial needs at this point too. But if we continue to defer capital projects and building maintenance in that, this problem only becomes worse in the end, and then you start talking about other buildings that could then have catastrophic failures with various systems in there, and you know, those are not cheap or easy to fix or quick to fix.
John, I realize that, but I would like to see a situation where we start building our fund balance to the point to where if we have to spend an extra couple $1 million out of that for capital improvements, we can do that without the situation where we're keeping it, and that's the way we've kept it at that 15.5. You know, some years we spend $7 million on it, some years, it's always, we build in this obligation before we even do our budget. So that limits us on anything else that we might want to do or need to do in the rest of our budget. And that 15.5 has been done purposely, because that is about as low as we ever want to go if we're going to be able to get through the year with that. But there's a point at which, especially this year, obligating us $5 million of our budget, tying that up, when we don't know, there's so many uncertain things out there right now, makes me really nervous. And if you could push $2 million of that back until next year, then you may have more money to work with. We'd be in better shape. But you know, we're not much different than how people handle their home situation right now.
Right.
If they have things at home that they need to take care of, and they can't do it because they're not sure what's going to happen with their job or whatever else, they push that project back. And then if they end up keeping that money, then they can go ahead and do more the next year. But I think this is a bad time to obligate $5 million of our budget that we haven't even talked about. I think it's a dangerous time to do that. That's my opinion.
So if they did only pod 3 and 4, do you have any kind of idea how much that would lower it? Or if they only did the library in pod 5 this summer, how that would affect the amount?
We don't have that right offhand.
Can I, Vicki?
Bob, do you have any questions? Anybody?
I would like to.
Okay.
John, you start working on the budget in March, and usually you'll have it ready June, at the end of June, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, because we are required to have it done at the end of June. I have a lot of difficulty working with numbers before we have an approved budget. I believe that is not a good fiscal movement at this time. We need to be very careful with what we do. What you proposed to us last December, or what you showed us, it's devastating to this district, where we're going to be in the next few years. So we need to be extremely cautious of how we handle our money in this district. And to make a decision tonight on spending money on a budget, and I'm not sure everyone understands, we're looking at 2021, 22 budget, and we haven't even discussed it at all. That is not fiscally responsible, and that's what our job is to be fiscally responsible. So I have a huge issue with trying to look at this. I know those buildings need it, but we need to be careful with what we're doing right now.
I don't understand, I mean, maybe I just don't understand why the money is sitting there it's not up there, under the 2021 budget, but we're really gonna pay for it out of the 21-22 budget. And the way it looks like we are approving it a whole year before we're paying for it.
And the updated spreadsheet, it's in 21-22.
Okay, as I look at this,
right.
I'm thinking it's like we're living a dream by.
And part of this too, and I respect and understand your points of view absolutely, but there's also a timing issue, as I tried to address. So you got to do planning and getting things ready, and if you're going to get on a construction calendar, I mean, you can't wait till June for that fiscal year, because you've already missed your window for the construction to occur, because it needs to start as soon as school's out in May. So I just want to make sure that that's understood. We've got to, I mean, there at some point there's got to be discussion ahead and of a budget that, you're right, we haven't talked about the budget yet, but we've also been working towards doing these long-range plans and updates and projections and to help you feel more comfortable with that. So I agree.
But what if the
and I
governor
respect-
cuts another $4 million from our budget?
If he cuts another $4 million from our budget, well,
Yeah.
you're right, that's difficult, absolutely.
Can I make
First
some
thing.
comments on that? If the governor cuts $4 million from our budget, can we just say, we're not gonna do that?
No, we'd still owe it because they.
No, I mean, if they hadn't started
Well,
on the
obviously, if we
project.
approve it, they're gonna start right now.
Well,
And we would still owe, if you have
This-
the
so what-
contract with BRS, we'd have to pay them.
well, yeah, and what this would be giving the okay to go, okay, we need to go ahead and get plan documents together and out and get the projects bid.
Mm-hmm.
This is not approving the projects that, yes, they're gonna happen, but that we can start the work to get that done, get the projects bid, and come back to the board with bids for whatever projects you would, ask that we do. At that
Well,
point,
and one of the.
once that is agreed to and then contracts are signed, at that point, yep, it's obligated.
The other thing that I mean, I know you've explained, but that's almost double what the original amount was that you've provided us previously, these updated numbers on those two projects. I mean, if I remember correctly, it was about for both buildings, it was about 2.4, maybe 2.7 tops, and now it's 4.1 million. So
Well,
I know that their
Right.
prices increased, but that's almost double.
And that previous document, you're right, it shows 2.65 million in 21-22. However, that 900,000 for Seckman High School, in the document that you do have there, was pulled up into last summer's work to help get that done. So really, we're talking about the 1.2 plus the 1.2, the 1.8, and the 2 over the next 3 years for Seckman High School to complete that, and the 1.75 for Fox Elementary. You're right. I mean, that's up some, but as Scott was talking about, we're looking at other alternates as well.
So to be clear, what you're saying then is on Seckman Senior High, what was listed for the plan for 21-22, the 900,000, that's already been done this year?
Correct. That got pulled into the summer because they increased that to try to speed up the getting the project done for the scope of work.
It just seems that should have been, I don't know, it just seems like that should have been board approved before it was done. I mean, I wasn't aware that was done.
I believe it was.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I wasn't here, but I believe it was.
I don't know. Okay.
I have another question, John. How much, what percentage of the work has BRS already done that you're wanting to be approved? I don't know if I'm asking this correctly. It says it needs to make a motion to determine if they need to continue with their projects. So How much have they already done for those projects? What percentage of the work has been done?
So according to the architect fee schedule, it was 25%, which, as I understand it, the majority of the work so 75% of an architect's fee all occurs before construction ever starts, because they're doing all the schematics and drawings and research and planning and meetings and all those kind of things. So 75% of that occurs before a shovel ever hits the ground. The remaining 25% occurs during construction phase. So at this point, they're basically a third through the planning portion for this summer's project. But that third, although it's only 25%, encapsulated the majority of the work and the research and the hours, getting everything ready for construction documents and bidding the project out and managing that process and all that. It comes up through the beginning of the construction phase, and would it be able to occur quicker. So there's a lot more hours in the first 25% than in the next 50%.
Can I?
Thought you might have a question on this.
Can I go ahead? Okay. I'm not quite sure, but this is real unusual for me, that we are approving, we've already approved the architect to move forward on a budget that we haven't developed yet. I'm very confused why an architect would have moved forward and the board has not even approved that yet. And they've already done work on these projects. Am I correct? Am I hearing this correctly?
You're correct.
So this
But
is quite unusual.
Those plans are still good.
This
Those
basically,
plans are good. If you put it off, if you put your project off for a year, you still have your documents, your documents, so that
Yes.
we own the documents at this
Yes,
point.
and we have the documents.
Right, we own those, so we're obligated to the documents, the work. And Judy said it best. What we're doing is, we know, you can pretty much project what our operational costs are gonna be next year based on our current, our current level of staffing and all that business.
Right.
And so you know what that is. And the one thing that you can't project is what's going to happen at the state level. Things can happen. I went through that once where we had a
Yep.
lot of
I did too.
bad experience. You went through it too.
Yes.
Okay, so here's the deal. We obligate this $4 million. We get a withholding from the state, but this is already obligated. Okay, so we got to come up with that $2 million. So because we got to come up with it, then we have to look at maybe reducing staff. There's a lot of different things that go on. Any other time, I would say, hey, look, relative to the issue of there being projects that we need to get done out there, absolutely. There's not a school district around that doesn't have projects that they need to get done. We got $40 million worth of bond issue projects that are going right now. I just feel really uncomfortable obligating nearly $5 million when we don't know for sure if there's going to be another state withholding, and maybe there won't be. But in these particular times, folks, this is not a time to be going any further, extending yourself any further than you need to. So I don't really have
well, it
anything else.
looks
And I
like
will-
after all the discussion, the motion's died for a lack of second anyway.
Well, I do want to clarify one thing. So a withholding from the state affects operating funds, not capital projects funds.
Okay, but the operating funds and the capital project funds, if you don't spend these operating, these capital project funds, where does that money end up at the end of the year?
At the end of the year, if the revenue came into the capital projects fund, it stays in the capital projects fund.
I mean, it would become a part of our reserve.
Right, it would become part of the reserve for the capital projects fund, not the operating funds.
You're saying that money can't be used for anything else, just capital projects, right?
If it's in the capital, if the money's in the capital projects fund, it stays in the capital projects fund. There are some very limited circumstances where you can move money from the capital projects back to the operating. but I'm talking some very limited. But if the money is raised on taxes that are allocated to the capital projects fund, that's where the money goes. It's where it stays.
So
So
why
you're-
don't we decide right now that if we're not going to put money in our schools and our classrooms for our kids, because that's why we're all here doing this, then we're going to freeze for next year. We're going to have staff, no raises. Is that what we want to do right now? Because we will be approving raises. No, I know right
That's not
now.
what it's
I know
saying.
right now, but you guys are giving me grief about doing that motion on a budget that we don't have. But I know in a couple months we'll be talking about salaries for next year.
There's already an agreement. We don't have any salary discussion next year. It's already, we have a 3-year contract. It's the
Okay.
last year of the contract. There's no
I'm always
salary
going
discussion.
to go and support kids. And I think the kids need good HVAC, lighting, a proper learning environment. So you guys are not gonna second it because of fear. So Tony, you can put in the leader, Fox board runs with fear.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the Seckman High School project, if we could do that. Would
There's a
you all
motion on
agree
the
to
floor.
do?
There's a motion on the floor already,
No, it's
Michelle.
done.
Carol.
Okay. Or can we talk about what we could possibly agree to, move forward so that they can start getting their bids?
So you're,
You folks do what you want to do. I think it's a dangerous time to be obligating money that we haven't even really budgeted yet. We haven't looked at our budget. We haven't looked at anything. We haven't approved anything. We've been doing this on a pretty regular basis, and it goes up to 7 million one year, 5 million the next year. We've been going through this process for a while. And that number, and it seems to always go up, but it always keeps our reserve at the same. We always end up with almost within $100 or two, which I think is extraordinary. We keep our reserve right at that minimum level. That doesn't make sense to me. And that means we're essentially spending money to get that down. Now, if you want to say let's say we want to have a reserve at the end of this year of 17 million. What would you do?
I would tell you that's not going to happen.
Even if we don't spend $2 million here,
At the end of this year?
or at the end of next year, I guess.
At the end of next year, if you wanted to have a reserve of $17 million,
it's not possible right now.
it's
Well,
not,
if you don't spend 5, if you don't obligate 5, and you're only obligating 3,
I would tell you there would have to be some revenue enhancements in the form of
so what's going to happen to the 3 that we don't spend on this? Just curious.
what's going to happen with the 3 if we don't spend. It's going to stay in the capital projects fund.
And it's going to show up in that reserve, correct?
Right, for the capital projects, but not in the operating. It's not going to change the 15.3 that we're at right now, or that we were at the end of last year.
So the balance in the capital improvement projects never shows up. So you could have a balance of $10 million in there and it never shows up in your reserve?
It doesn't show in the operating reserves. Funds 1 and 2 together, not Fund 4. It does show up in the total reserves, but in the operating, which is, I mean, that's the main number that DESI looks at when people say, you know, our fund balances are 20% or 30% or whatever percent. That's just Funds 1 and 2. That totally excludes Funds 3 and 4.
Yeah.
From my recollection, John, that's a good analysis of how that happens, how the levy is distributed across the funds. And once those funds are in those particular categories, that's where they are.
Right.
And they're readjusted every year if possible.
Right.
If the
That
money
change
comes
could
in.
occur at setting the tax levy in September of next year. But, you know, that's 6 months or 9 months away.
the time that it could change. Is that correct?
To change that levy, absolutely.
Yeah, you have to declare the levy in those categories.
So you're essentially obligating that amount of money, is what you're saying, when we set the levy?
We're
Percentage-
obligating that
percentage-wise.
revenue to that fund, yes.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that part of that, I mean, we've got lease payments for another 7 years that are funded out of that levy. And that's about 27 cents on average of that 62-cent levy is those capital lease payments that have to be made each year.
Judy, you had something you wanted to discuss. You were saying you wanted to consider whether or not we do the
I just,
supplements
I
in
mean,
high.
I
Is
just
that what you're
feel
saying?
like we're spending money that we don't have, but I realize that if we don't do something, nothing's gonna happen this summer. So, I mean, I'm not sure. Bob, maybe you can explain it to us. Is this something that we should be doing? Planning to spend money we don't even know if we have? I'm not quite sure the predicament we're really in. I mean, we don't have the money. I realize it's been budgeted, but it's been budgeted out of money we don't even have yet. And I don't want to see us commit money if we're going to end up having to cut staff to pay for that because we allocated that money and then we end up not having the money, so we have to cut staff to have the money to pay for that. Is that accurate?
I don't think so, because again, we're talking about capital projects as opposed to operating.
So if we don't have the money, somehow the governor cuts money, we don't have the money, how does that get paid for then?
That, any money that the governor would be cutting would be related to operations. So it'd be Fund 1 and Fund 2, not capital projects, which is
Okay.
Fund 4. We get, I don't think there's any money that we allocate out of any state aid payments that goes to Fund 4.
So are you saying that we're guaranteed a certain amount of money to go into our capital funds?
That's based on the tax rate and the assessed valuation.
Okay, so
You could have no money in the capital projects funding if you set it up that way. You wouldn't have to put any money there. But you have to pay the capital projects out of that fund, so there has to be
So
some money.
September or October, we set that.
Yes,
And so that money is going to go into that fund.
yes,
And that money is going to be there.
yes.
Time, if we found out the budget had been drastically cut in September, when we set the rate, we could change it and take it out of capital projects, correct?
We could reduce the amount of the levy allocated to capital projects, and that would remain in operations then.
Okay, so
Okay,
I
so,
guess, so, and I've expressed this to you before, I just still can't wrap my head around making a vote on a budget we don't have, and I know the planning, but I think what's happened is we've gotten caught in a cycle where that was done for several years, and now that's the trend, whereas I'm used to, you get the budget, you make the plan for that next summer out of that, you plan it that way, so it's just, when you know what the budget is, then you plan it that way, so it's not like you're doing it this far in advance, if that makes sense.
So
Bob,
if
can you
we-
help me with that? I just don't ever.
So if we
recall-
only,
Judy, I was talking.
but if we only spent half of what we say we're gonna spend, then the other half is gonna go into a savings account.
Will remain in the capital projects
Okay,
reserve.
and so then the next year, we should have more,
Yes,
and then the money's already there, and we can budget that money because we know it's already there. Right now, it's not there, right?
correct.
okay, my question is this. what happened? I mean, just say, okay, we're not going to approve this. Now, I'm scenario, please don't yell at me, because it needs to be done. But if we don't do it now, and the work that's already been done stops, and we put this off until, then what happens? It's going to cost us more money. The
There's
work
only
has to
been
be
planning
redone.
done, Carol.
It's halfway, it's a fourth done, and nothing can be finished. What happens if we don't do this?
The remainder of the system at Seckman High School and Fox Elementary get older and
Won't work.
still need
We're
the
still
work.
going to need it. Okay.
You
I
know,
mean, I 100%.
inflation happens, you know, the cost of living goes up.
100% know that we need that. We need this. And my concern is not that we don't need it. My concern is, like everybody else's, are we ready to commit to that much money this far in advance? You have a really good argument for yes, because you're telling us that it's typical that you do this, and it's typical the money will stay in that fund. But at the same time, we know what happened when this pandemic started, and anything that happens in the state of Missouri is going to affect us. So I don't think it's that we don't think we need it or we don't want to do it. I think we're all just a little bit scared of making that kind of a commitment.
It's a big
year in
decision.
advance.
It's a big decision, and the only point I'm really getting to tonight is that the time for this decision is waning.
Now.
Okay, I have
So
one.
we can't wait until May and go, you know what, we're good with spending $2 million, $4 million, whatever that number is, this summer on these projects, because it's not going to happen.
Okay,
Okay.
I
let me go back to my original
okay,
proposal.
wait a minute.
Is there any way that you can cull that down to where it's more between $3 and $4 million?
I would suppose there probably does exist a way to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
And,
Could I-
and I will say, as far as what this document is, my updated document, which I know you all can't see, shows $5,026,000, of which $900,000 I have on school buses line. So that leaves, you know, the $4.1 million for these two capital projects.
Okay, my question that I want to ask is Judy mentioned that just doing Seckman Senior High and getting that done, because it would be completely done, is that, no, it would not be.
No, that is phase 4 of 6.
Okay, but it's 1.65 million, and of the two situations, is Seckman Senior High the most significant need?
I believe so.
Well, that would be under your amount, Jim, and if we're going to approve anything, that would make sense, rather than.
Even if you brought Fox Elementary down to pods just 3 and 4, or the library in pod 5, will that bring it down $1 million?
They don't know. They already.
I'm not sure on that. Could you repeat that, Judy?
If we did Seckman and then only did pods 3 and 4, or only did the library in pod 5, would that bring that amount? Well, it's obviously going to bring it down.
It'll bring it down. Pods 3 and 4 are in much greater need than the library and pod 5. And I think they entail more work, and so would be the larger portion.
3 and 4 entail more work than
Right.
5 and the library.
So I know I know there's been a lot of discussion around this. I know at the last board meeting, what the board requested John and I to do was go back, analyze all the capital improvement projects that we were recommending, and come back with our top ones. So as your superintendent and as our CFO, we've gone through this information, and we are recommending Seckman High School and Fox High School because those are the top two capital improvement projects that need to happen. And I understand the board's hesitation on approving them before a budget is built. I do. But I'm letting you know that John and I have sat down, we've looked at our projections, and we believe that this can happen. Now, obviously, this is the board's decision, so I think we're at that point where we need to decide what we want to do.
Well, and it could be that the board may need a little bit more time to think about it. I don't know if we want to consider bringing it back next month, but I think we're just at the point that nobody's really comfortable with it except for Michelle, so we probably need to go on to the next agenda item. Is that what I'm hearing from everyone?
Again, John, is there any way that you could bring back a proposal that's like at 3.5, somewhere around there?
Well,
And it may mean that you got to scale back some of the projects.
we'll take a look at that and see what we can bring back, and I will target the, what is that, the February 2nd?
Second.
February 2nd meeting, because that's going to be like the,
Well,
that is the end line as far as decisions for summer projects.
Just kind of like if this $5 million actually comes through and goes into the budget, then next year, there's more money there.
Right.
And it's like we're spending what we actually have. And that's really what I would like to see us move to, is spending what we have, not what we're hoping to have.
I get that.
And I understand that you can kind of predict that, but only kind of. And so I think, I don't know, I just feel like we need to, if we cut back just a little bit this year, and we have money that stays in that account, that's money that already is there when we need to do our voting. And that's just kind of what I'd like to see.
Okay. We'll take a look. I'll bring that back on the 2nd.
In other words, what we're talking about is maybe shifting this process to where we're having the money before we obligate it, and rather than obligating it before we have it.
I understand. Absolutely.
John, one last thing, just real quick for my own edification. Can you give me an idea of what the levies are in each fund right now? Do you have that handy?
If you would bear with me just a moment, I can pull that data right up. So, based on the forms that we filed, the board, approved the tax rate in September. Our levy in the incidental fund, Fund 1, is $3.49.7. Our debt service levy is $0.3901 or 39.01 cents. And our capital projects is 62 cents. The total levy is $4.50.71 cents.
And of that, like 37 cents of that is tied up in the lease purchase, correct?
Of the 62 cents, I would say it's like 27,
27?
roughly. I mean, it's a little higher, some years a little lower others, but overall long haul, it's about 27 cents of that 62 is lease purchase.
We ready to go? Sorry. First reading of the 21-22 district calendar.
We are requesting that the board accept the draft calendar that's attached for a first reading for next school year. The calendar was developed with the calendar committee, which is staff, parents, and administrators from every level. And our plan is to bring this back for a second reading and adoption at our next meeting on the 2nd.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Bob.
Second, Jim Shalhoub.
All in favor? Did that pass? I didn't hear everybody. Oh, no? Okay, passed. Next item, 5.3, approval of the memorandum of understanding with Missouri Baptist University.
Yes, excuse me. In order to place an intern for psychological examiner in our district, we have to have a memorandum of understanding enacted between the district and the university. This would take care of that. And we're asking your approval.
Okay, can I get a motion, please?
Motion to approve, Smith.
Second, Chamberlain?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank
Next
you.
item is summer school, early childhood special ed, extended school year pay rate.
We are requesting that the board approve a part-time rate for the early childhood extended school year program for teachers. The other programs for summer school already have a part-time rate in place as well as a full-time rate, and Dr. Townsley is anticipating needing a part-time rate this year as well.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Carol? Can I get a second, please?
Second, Smith.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is approved contract for supplemental custodial service. John?
So you have the newly attached contract with ABCO for this service that we find ourselves in need of. We have, as was mentioned earlier, 8 custodial staff in one building that are all quarantined now. That happened effective Friday, or we found out about it Friday, so Mr. Barbagallo contacted 3 contractors and said, we need to see if you can do this for us starting Monday. ABCO came back and actually toured the building on Sunday with Scott and submitted their rates there for $1,200 per night for this week, and then should anything be needed more going forward, you see that rate goes to $30 per hour per person, and that is due to they would not be hiring additional staff because this would be on an as needed basis for the district, not a ongoing you can count on it service kind of thing. So so we're asking that the board approve this contract, and as I mentioned, these services would only be used as needed and for these kind of emergency type situations, and they do fall under the emergency provisions of DJF AP 1.
So is this just for 1 week?
Yes, the $1,200 is for this week. If there's any needed going forward, it would be at a rate of $30 an hour per person.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion, please?
Motion, Chamberlain?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Six 6.3, payment of bills.
So you have in front of you the Group A bills, and they're presented for your review and approval, and I would ask for the board to approve them as presented.
Motion to approve, Smith.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Yes?
Yes.
Opposed? Next item is donations. Dr.
Asking,
Patel.
yes, we're asking the board to approve the 2 $500 donations from Ned and Bethany Hendrickson for Seckman Elementary Schools for Mr. Claxton and Mrs. Steller's classroom.
Motion. Was it Smith? Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Second, Ms. Bob. All in favor?
Yes.
All right, motion passed. Next item is consent agenda. Dr. Brock.
We are asking the board's approval for the attached separations, hires, and modifications.
I need a motion.
Smith, motion to accept.
Second, Yant?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passed. And I think that's it.
I make a motion, we adjourn. What?
Can we get a second?
I will second it.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Yes.
Yes.